German Chancellor Angela Merkel making her first visit to Greece today since the debt crisis erupted there in 2009. Greece's two largest unions taking to the streets in protest of austerity cuts. Fortunately, Michelle Caruso-Cabrera is here. She's able to talk us through all of that, and she has a special guest.
Thank you so much, Becky. Let's show everybody the live pictures in honor of Angela Merkel arriving in Greece. There are thousands and thousands of protesters once again in front of Parliament. Angela Merkel going into the lion's den. She's the leader of Germany, the country that is providing the most bailout money to Greece, which has received and is receiving hundreds of billions of euros as they try to balance their budget and reform their economy. It's gotten a little bit ugly this morning. Actually, let's show you first her arriving. She arrived just a couple of hours ago, greeted by the Prime Minister, who's been in charge only for a couple of months, Antonis Samaras. She's there to show support to the Greek people and also to encourage them to continue their reforms, of which they've been very slow at doing, but also probably to lay down a little bit of the law to say they've got to get it done if they're going to keep receiving the money. Here she arrives at the Parliament. Let's show you some video. There's been a lot of anti-German sentiment in Greece for the last couple of years. I find this just emotionally disturbing. When I look at this, this is people dressed as Nazis with the Nazi flag, the Hitler salute going through the square to protest Angela Merkel and her arrival there. I want to bring in Nigel Farage. He's one of the biggest Eurosceptics out there. He's the founding member of the UK Independence Party, a member of the European Parliament, a representative from the UK. Good to have you here on this day.
Good morning.
What do you think when you see these pictures on the ground in Greece?
I just think this European project, which if you remember was designed after World War II to bring Europe closer together, to make us all love each other, and just look what it's doing. It's actually making the north and the south of Europe hate each other. Yes, you've got those people dressed up in Nazi uniforms in Athens, but don't forget the tabloid press in Germany are writing every day that the Greeks are useless, they're lazy, and not worthy of their money. So I think the symbolism of Angela Merkel turning up in Greece at a time like this is horrible. And if I was Greek, I'd say to myself, here I am living in a country that invented democracy, and now we have a series of foreign leaders and foreign bureaucrats telling us what we can and can't do. And frankly, what you're seeing on the screens with these protests can only grow as time goes on.
But, I mean, Nigel, you're in a tricky situation there. I mean, the Greek people need the support that's been given them and the loans that have been coming their way.
No, they don't.
Why not just a default and go back and forget it all?
The Greek people are imprisoned inside a currency they should never have joined in the first place.
But you're basically saying they should just default, right?
I think they should default. I think they should devalue and give themselves an opportunity to trade their way back to prosperity, and they would also get back their democracy, their ability to govern themselves, and perhaps some sense of hope. Because what I get in my mailbag from Greece are people who literally feel hopeless. They cannot see any light at the end of the tunnel.
I need a little help here. The German people work like hell, have a solid economy. It's their money. They've been carrying the Greeks by virtue of the debt they bought. Explain to me why these people feel they have a right. And let me preface this. Every Greek I know in America is smart, ambitious, they work like hell. They have a great work ethic. What's the right of these people to look to the German people and say, give us more. You should give us more. I agree with you. Greece should never have gone into the Union, but we are where we are. But collectively, for a nation to say to a creditor, I want more money, because this is what this is all about.
Well, that's what the government's saying, but it's not what those demonstrators are saying.
Well, no, but if in fact Germany was more forthcoming, the likelihood of this kind of demonstration would not be very high.
But, you know, we've bailed out the Greeks now 3 times effectively. There is no growth coming back into the Greek economy. In fact, the Greek economy will contract this year by a further 7%. We've got youth unemployment now touching 60% in Greece. The situation is hopeless.
And BLS calculated youth unemployment about 9% over there, actually. Not 6, no, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Well, a little bit out there.
Our BLS
it's actually
9%.
It's actually not too far away in Spain either at the moment. Frankly, we are sending Greece, by keeping her imprisoned inside a currency that doesn't suit her, with an austerity package that is pretty harsh and with no compensation. The mystery to me is, why are the IMF supporting all of this?
I agree.
That to me is the mystery.
I agree.
You don't think the euro should exist generally, right?
Well, I think there was an optimal currency area in Northern Europe, and it's quite arguable that half a dozen countries could have worked together inside an economic and monetary union.
Right.
But I was there. I was in Brussels when the euro was launched, and I tried to ask economic questions. I was told, Nigel, go away. Don't bother us with detail. We're building a new state. And that's the point. It was political from the start. Nobody thought about it. So, but I think in the end, the whole thing will fail, and I'll tell you why. Because right at the heart of this, of course, is the Franco-German pact that is the basis of the whole European Union. And what no one's noticed as we look at Greece is that actually there's a massive competitiveness gap opening up now between France and Germany. The French have got a new president. The first thing he did was to reduce retirement age from 62 to 60. The second thing he did was to up the minimum wage. Oh, and the third thing he did was to introduce a hate tax.
A hate tax.
Of 75%, which says if you're an entrepreneur, left in Paris, leave now.
There's a lot of merit to that. You have the Northern European bloc, which people work and manufacture and do things, and then you have the Southern European bloc, where it's just all vacation
Basically,
places,
yes.
and do have a different currency, and have people go, think about it, Italy, wow, Spain, Costa del Sol, Greece, the island, I mean, I see it, but now the only problem, where does France fit in? Because they don't work in...
well, that I think... well, that I think is the fault line that lies at the heart of this, that ultimately I don't think France and Germany will survive together in the long term inside an economic and monetary union, and that's why I think that the death of the Eurozone is going to be a very long, slow and painful process.
Long and slow.
With Greece being the first one out.
Greece will be the first one out, and then it'll be Portugal or Spain afterwards.
And you're right, they can devalue their currency, they can get back to being competitive, they don't need to create that many jobs with 11 or 12 million people to move the needle.
When do you think this happens?
If I knew the answer to that, I'd be down at the bookmakers right now. I just don't know.
But don't you think that so many
long.
of
We've had this a very long
so
time,
many
right?
of the elites, if you will, and in Europe are so tethered to this idea of making it happen, right? I was just in Paris, and it was just so clear to me that every single person thinks we have to make this work. So what is going to be the straw that breaks that back?
Well, I think this whole thing will take much longer than it should. Economic logic says it should break up quickly, but the political will that you just described, I would describe it as fanaticism. They are fanatical about this project. Doesn't matter however much the project fails, they think the solution is more of the same. I think this is going to take many, many years. What will break it up in the end, I think it'll be one of two things. It'll either be a democratic revolution in countries like Finland and the Netherlands, where they get governments who say enough, or it will be violent revolution.
You said something very provocative to me before we came on, which was you see the fanaticism almost to the equivalent of the fanaticism that once existed for communism.
Yes, I do.
But my answer to you was, but if you look at the plan that they've outlined for Greece, it's a path towards capitalism, isn't it? Reform your labor markets, do this, that. These are liberalizations of these countries. It's very different, isn't it?
But at the same time, they're saying that the Greeks have to introduce green taxes and ridiculous carbon emission targets. How on earth is Greece going to get manufacturing going with its whole CO2 lunacy around their necks? And you know, whenever the European Union talks about liberalisation, be suspicious. What they mean by liberalisation actually is central demand management of the economy.
Wow. Anarchists have arrived on the square, so if you see a lot of running...
I was wondering where they were.
Yeah, they finally arrived.
Michelle, we were talking about how the protests were banned for a while. Merkel was there.
And yet they've allowed them to happen.
Yeah.
I think it was going to be ugly if they really tried to force tens of thousands of people to not show up. Did you really want to have hand-to-hand combat with the... Generally speaking, when the communists show up to protest, and that's who's driving the vast majority of these protests, they are actually quite peaceful, and they're usually the ones beating up the anarchists trying to prevent them from arriving, right? So it's... so
you want these people here, the pensioners and the rest of these people, to keep things a little calmer?
Exactly.
Are you, Nigel, are you following this country and our histrionics with this election coming up?
Very much. And
you want to stick around for another block and we'll take a break?
It would, yeah. I mean, I'm fascinated.
Will you say some crazy stuff about what's going on here as well?
I must say, I'm amazed that there is not a proper debate in America going on about the size of your debt.
Ah, perfect. That's a good tease.
Okay.
Michelle, Nigel, Ken, everybody's going to stick around. We're going to continue this conversation in just a moment.